podcast excellence since 2005. This is the King of Podcasts radio network, kingofpodcasts.com.
Hollywood is going all in on influencers.
The King of Podcasts radio network proudly presents the Broadcasters Podcast. Here is the King of Podcasts.
So Hollywood thinks they can start another generation, another golden age, if you will, by not going the normal route of trying to bring on talent that might get agents and might get themselves represented, and they might have gone to acting school and they might have gotten their acting chops and they've worked in theater and they've worked in other productions, and then all of a sudden they make their way over to Hollywood for that big dream. And when they get to those studios, they're going to go up against somebody that's going to come in probably a little bit cheaper, a little bit easier to go ahead and gather. For whatever reason, Hollywood now is in a desperate mode because they're going to try to use influencers, and it could not be more apparent than what I saw today with several stories that came up in the Hollywood Reporter. Today it happens. And for whatever reason, now they're feeling like, well, we're going to go ahead and approach and make a whole bunch of influencers, which I will say, there are some that I see here I've never seen before, but they could be plants. They could be some nepotism in there. We don't know. Like, there's a lot of things there where we know there are some influencers that come into the space, and however they're being found, they're going to become the next crop of people we're going to see in Hollywood. The thing is, we realize that I think reality shows, reality television, after having a good run for a good 30 years, over 3 decades, that it is starting to wane. And, what's happening is you're seeing it only on streaming and not so much on cable anymore. And really not so much on network TV, except for some of those franchises that have stayed around that their intellectual property still means something. And if they do adapt anything new for reality, it's always taken from somewhere else, aka Love Island. But now you want to realize, okay, you're doing this and you're going to hope that you're going to have influencers that are going to be very popular, that are going to go ahead and grab the interest of Main Street. That is the big risk that you're taking. It's a gamble. And there's a lot of reasons where people think that this might be a good idea to use that. I mean, one of the things I even notice right now, you see there's a lot of influencers that are being used for commercials, a lot of promotional material. And when I see commercials on TikTok or Instagram, yeah, there are influencers being put all over that. And also YouTube. Let's make that point clear too. So they're thinking this might be a good idea, that they're everyday people, supposedly, when I can't tell you how many times I see certain people that are given an opportunity here as an influencer. You got to understand, where are these people coming from? And if their popularity is anything significant, how are they going to handle fame? How are they going to handle being around other people? The whole point is that Hollywood can easily manipulate these people. They found a following. They found something that, through their own grassroots work, they're willing to go and sell out. And that's what they're going to do here. So the people that they have pointed out in this particular set of stories today in the Hollywood Reporter is they're all going to sell out. And there are some that have some notoriously toxic backgrounds on them when I look at who they also decide to go and put on. And these people are multifaceted. They're going to find ways to market themselves, promote their brand, and find ways to get themselves more money as they can, because it's a cash grab too. So how authentic or genuine are some of these people before money starts coming into play? You got to keep that in mind too. And some of these people have been in the influencer game for years, and more than a decade in some cases. Well, before TikTok became popular. So we've had roughly 6 years or so of TikTok, another 14 of Instagram, and 15 some odd or 15 plus of Facebook or X, if they're even being considered from those routes. It's the newer forms of content, or YouTube Shorts also would be part of that. Or Snapchat is another spot. Like, there's places to go now to get yourself out there. But for Hollywood, I guess it's just easier for them to go ahead and just audition remotely than even think they need to do anything else. See, the thing is that, of the old days of the golden age of Hollywood, they would just take somebody that just had a certain look And a talent agent might just find them somewhere, rural or urban, and they say, we're going to do everything we got to do to make you a star. And then they will coddle that person, and they'll do whatever they have to do that. I think of, Mr. Waltz and The Godfather, right? The first Godfather. And, I got to play that clip. Give me a second. Let me go ahead and look for that real quick. Here it is. So, Mr. Waltz, he's Jack Woltz, president of Waltz International Pictures in the movie The Godfather. No, not Megalopolis, that other Francis Ford Coppola movie, okay? The best one. The first Godfather, or the second. You can either pick, but let me just play this clip real quick with The Godfather, courtesy Paramount Pictures. And here's the scene, and I just want you to focus on what Jack Woltz says about the starlet that Johnny Fontaine tainted by having sex with her. So let's go and play that real quick.
You don't understand. Johnny Fontaine never gets that movie. That part is perfect for him. It'll make him a big star. I'm going to run him out of the business, and let me tell you why. Johnny Fontaine ruined one of Waltz International's most valuable protégés. For 5 years, we had her under training, singing lessons, acting lessons, dancing lessons. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on her. I was going to make her a big star. And let me be even more frank. Just to show you that I'm not a hard-hearted man, that it's not all dollars and cents. She was beautiful. She was young. She was innocent. She was the greatest piece of ass I've ever had, and I've had them all over the world. And then Johnny Fontaine comes along with his olive oil voice and guinea charm. And she runs off. She threw it all away just to make me look ridiculous. And a man in my position can't afford to be made to look ridiculous.
Now, the Jack Woltz character, which was a great character, by the way, for itself, in just a short amount of time that he's in the movie, is fantastic. So, the whole explanation there of Jack Woltz is the fact that he had a starlet, a protege, and that's the word we're looking at right now for these influencers. A more vintage term of these influencers would be proteges. That is what they're going to be using them for. And they're happy to go ahead and take the time because they are young, they're vibrant, with the women, they're very young and beautiful in some cases, or they just have a certain look that resonates. And they feel like, well, they're not going to have to go to take them through a traditional acting school, and maybe some of the content they're going to create for them doesn't have to be very well scripted because, they can find AI or whatever they can to go and do it. If they can memorize some lines and emote some emotion, then I guess they'll do fine. It's not as if all of the Hollywood content we're getting right now is wonderful. I mean, I think of the last month I've been to the movies. Seeing movies like The Substance, Megalopolis, Joker 2. Oh my goodness. I did see that last week. And that's disappointing. Very disappointing. And all I can say about that is that, I mean, you want to go and bastardize the whole reason that everybody liked the first Joker movie? We never needed a second one. And it's nothing about Lady Gaga and her role in the movie. There's nothing about the musical numbers. I had no problem with the way that was presented, but the ending sucked. And really, the ending was much farther in. Once the confession was being done by Arthur Fleck, as Arthur Fleck, I lost it. Like, it was just like, okay, they destroyed this. Like, I was fine for about a good hour, 20 minutes of it. And then they decided to go this route. Okay, he's going to get charged. And then the courthouse blows up, right? So, like, that part right there, once we got to that point, yeah, probably didn't need to see Joker stay alive. I mean, I wonder how people would feel if they did stop the movie at the courthouse explosion. And that was it. Because I would almost prefer that than to continue on with the rest of the movie, which was not worth the time. It was bad. Like, I'll watch Megalopolis again. I'll do that before I have to go see that again. But, they decided to do that, and now they're going to pay in the box office, so there's that. So either which way, I've been to the movie theaters and I see some of these red carpet influencers, these influencers in general. There's Perry Nemoff, I think her name is, Straw Hat Goofy I've seen before. There's a couple of others that the movie service, Noovie, Noovie, the one thing that they do with all the promotional stuff before the movies come on, which also went bankrupt not too long ago and then got restructured. Like Odyssey. Remember I talked about that last week? Anyways, so now they're at the point where they decide, let's get some influencers to go and do some extra content. So Noovie doesn't want to go ahead and pay anybody to come on board. Hell, they use Marina Menounos to go ahead and put a little thing in there about her podcast and talking about things. And talk about the Noovie app. And then she has her cute laugh, right? Don't get me wrong, I love her. She's great. She's gorgeous. I'm not judging her. It's just what they gave her on the script, right? That's what they decided they're going to make her do. Anyways, these influencers are brought on to all this promotional material. It doesn't feel authentic. It feels fake. Because once the hands of the content goes away from the influencer, what their normal modus operandi is, and you leave it to agents, you leave it to managers, and you have other people decide to go and craft who they think you are, done. And what has to be understood too is that for influencers, they are replaceable. They are absolutely irreplaceable. They're disposable at this point. And what has to happen is for influencers, they only have a shelf life of what they can do in certain things. And they have to find what their gimmick is that keeps them relevant for as long as they can. And, it's very interesting how some people do that. And there are some that are others that I appreciate that they don't take just any sponsorship, that they have found a way to continue to get their audience. And they decide, well, I'm just going to keep the revenue that my fans keep bringing in, and I'm going to just keep working for them. So the live streamers, I Show Speed, Aiden Ross, K-Sanat, right? All those people. And I can appreciate that. And, they do their thing, and they will find ways to continue to go ahead and build themselves up. And there's a kid that destroyed his McLaren on the middle of the highway and on the Florida Turnpike, I think it was, the other day, and I forget who the name of the guy is, but either which way. These influencers, they are playing out fantasies. They probably started as gamers or something else, and then they found a way to build up their persona because they started putting themselves in front of the camera and decided, okay, we're going to talk about ourselves. Or just comment on things, like whatever it might be the idea. But if you show a scintilla of personality and you're authentic and unique and you're different, yeah, then, people kind of, and you feel like they can relate to you. That's even better. But that's what they're going to try to do. And some of these folks are going to try to go ahead and be brought over, see what happens with them. And we see some of that already. And see if anything can happen with some of these influencers and what they can do to build themselves up. The D'Amelios, great example. Charlie and Dixie, putting out music. Charlie very much a dancer. And finding a way to go ahead and put themselves out there and, do the reality show. Make something for themselves. But then after a while, the new influencers come with a little less resilience and a lot more vulnerability. They're not as strong-willed as the counterparts that come into Hollywood, that get battle tested through the casting couch, through the parties, to what they're going to be made to do to make the deal with the devil to become famous. And these influencers are willing to be subjected to this for fame. Because they're being told that the other stars of Hollywood are starting to age themselves out. And that they need new box office stars. They need new stars to put into any project they want. Because some of the stars we have right now that are still holding the fort, being stars, they need to build new stars. We've seen some that have come through the ranks, but it took a while to get them there. It's not like the Disney Channel or all these other, outlets that offered child stars that would be grown into adult stars that would be doing something, right? They're not all coming out like that. And so you got to figure out, okay, what are you going to do to find someone that might not be stage comfortable? Give them a script, make them memorize, have them do this, have them do that, and try to build that persona and see if they can really build off of it. Hollywood Reporter takes a story real quick that Hollywood is obsessed with red carpet influencers, but are they worth it? And that's everything that's got to be said about it. So they refer to videos that went viral for Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. 20th Century Fox put that movie out back in May. And the studio had invited Easton Simpson to do red carpet interviews, creating content with stars Owen Teague and Freya Allen. And Simpson's had more than 400,000 TikTok followers, largely gained from a bit where midway through his interviews, he starts mumbling, pranking his subjects who can't understand what he's asking. Doing this with the cast, and videos quickly blew up. More than 25 million combined views on Instagram, and more than 30 million on TikTok. But then it was backlash, because some commented he was misusing his platform. And let's play a little example of what he's doing on the red carpet, just to kind of get people the idea of what he's doing here, so people can understand. Here we go.
Such a unique movie, and you have such a unique role. Was there any time in the filming that you really started noticing you planning? You would tell them
that I noticed what?
Just all the people, especially when you really you tell me.
Sorry, I didn't catch that last bit. What did you say?
Just especially people when it's on the red carpet.
On the red carpet?
Yeah, if all the people you.
See, what's funny is that these influencers have taken gimmicks or acts that we have seen done before, when you're younger. Or they might just have picked it up from somewhere else. But it's something to go ahead and entertain. Just a little party trick. It's a parlor trick. And that's what he does. And it's pretty good on how he does it. And, that has a little short shelf life. So he could do that with other stars and whatever it is. It's like, what do you do on the red carpet to get yourself noticed? One of the best examples I could think of from years ago was when Conan O'Brien had Triumph the Insult comic dog. And what they were able to do with that character, which was hilarious, by the way. It was funny, but it was also a full-fledged gimmick with the accent, the dog with the bad lip syncing, and the cigar in mouth. The shit was funny. And they also didn't do it over the top where it's okay, you're seeing this character all the time. It was coming in spurts so that when you brought it back, it was really fresh and still interesting. And it still goes on today. But that's one of those things. I mean, look at that. You can still see clips currently of Triumph, the Insult comic dog, out there today. But it's one of those things like that. So they find a character, has a certain look, tall, blonde, and then put him in a suit and do this. And it works. And then you see what else you could do. Now, a top publicist of the town spoke to THR and says, quote, "We all use influencers because they are shiny and still newish. And if you don't, it feels like you're not tapping into the culture in a real way." Well, yeah, they're also trying to go ahead and attract new customers because the mainstream audience they have before, they have to go through grassroots, through digital means, with the gateway being these influencers, to draw new people to go ahead and watch, to go to the movies, to watch their shows on streaming or network or cable or wherever. It's hard to know how much they are driving box office or how much they are driving in people to tune into a show. Every movie is using influencers, so why not? Doesn't every movie work? And that's the part too. I can't tell you how many times I see movie reviews that are not movie reviews, they're just ads for the movie, and they're just giving a real generic review just to make you feel like you need to go. So we don't need movie reviewers or critics like we've had before. We could just have these folks that are on watching whatever movies you're watching. So another person they brought on here goes by the name Chronically Scary, talking about the movie Smile 2. Let's play this.
Coming out October 18th, which is a sequel to the first Smile. And the horrifying Smile chain curse from the first film still haunts me to this day, so I am beyond hyped for the second one.
So there's another one. But as they say, she's using this, but she probably does other clips where she's doing movie reviews, but use it in a promotional sense because there's already a trust that's been made by the influencer with their fans. And that's what he decided to go and do. So content creators are given plenty of freedom. Ali Tran, who has 1 million TikTok followers, she does horror movie content, has done paid partnerships with Maxine, A Quiet Place Day 1, and the upcoming Smile 2. That's who we just heard right there, Ali Tran. And she says that she's increasingly seen studios say, just do what you think would do great and then send us the drafts and we'll just approve it, rather than giving creators specific video guidelines. So they have to give some guidance. I mean, for them, obviously, if the influencer is going to be very much trying to get into good graces, to get more access, to go meet stars or to go to screenings or red carpet events or whatever it is, they're going to do whatever it takes to get to that. The LA premiere of body horror film The Substance, influencer Harry Daniels told THR, with its 1.6 million followers and UTA representation, he's already got an agent, he likes to be discerning about his partnerships. Quote, "Unless it pays incredibly well or feels like a good opportunity, I try to only do things that I feel particularly passionate about." I just want to partner on things that make sense for what I'm about. By the way, that movie opened to $3.1 million. They did get my money for that, so you can have that for you, okay? And then with that said, the other thing that's also happening is that where the influencers are coming from. And one of the places that's very expected is that the content creators, they found their way to Hollywood already. They're already in Los Angeles. Matter of fact, they say here in this other Hollywood Reporter article that it is a city of social media stars. 22 LA creators and 186.2 million followers and 1 billion likes and counting. So LA is the content creator capital of the world. And of course, the one thing that's helped people to get to this point for content creation, it can't be discouraged, and you can't downplay the fact that the content creation we have now, the quality of video that we have available that is affordable is amazing. I mean, even for podcasting right now, I'm using a very good microphone here, but like my setup, it's pretty simple. It's very easy. And the other thing too is that if I want to just do this all on my phone, I could easily do this on my phone. And that's what these people are doing right now. They use their phones, the cameras they have built in, to record videos, to record content, and then they can just use a laptop. They're going to use CapCut or whatever they want to use for editing purposes to add graphics, to add other things to it. But they're learning very easily how well to go ahead and create content, how to shoot it, how to frame it, how to light it, everything. They're figuring it out. And they probably have friends they know in Hollywood that kind of help them out with all this, or they have some other agents or other people that can help out because they're all trying to aspire to become stars in whatever way, shape, or possible, the way, shape, or form. So in the story, platforms like TikTok and its brethren have allowed for folks from across the globe to find a following, but there's still something about Los Angeles that draws budding talent. Content creators come to Tinseltown in search of fame, money, representation. And what I'm reading here that Hollywood Reporter decided to do, this is their first annual creators issue. And they decided to go and bring all these influencers together to go and talk about what they're doing. And then they show the names of who they have in here. And they're all different shapes and sizes of who they are. I can't tell you many of the names I've heard over here. I've heard of Brittany Broski. I've heard of Matt Friend. He does a lot of impressions and all. I didn't realize he was such a big thing, that he was one of these guys, also part of this. Drew Aflualo, quite a bit when it comes to talking about dating advice and being a voice against sexism, best-selling self-help meets manifesto author. I'm trying to see who else I know in here that I would be recognizing. And there's not a lot of these names that I really know. And I do spend quite a bit of time watching stuff on TikTok or Instagram. Sheila Mitchell I'm familiar with, of these other names. But like I said, there's quite a few names that I don't know. I'm not very familiar with. But when you look at these influencers together, you can understand why they might become stars that you'll see, that'll be familiar faces that you watch eventually on streaming or television or network or cable movies. You can see all that happening. And again, promotional content. You need people that can kind of host or MC certain content, and they just want simple people to just do simple things like that. But if they can find them through this route, then why not? That's the whole point. And so I'll just stick to a couple of the influencers they decided to go ahead and focus on, where they did profiles of certain stars in here of what they're doing, just to get a little idea of what they're doing in their backgrounds. Because one of the things that happens here too is that some of these stars that are brought into the space, you never heard about them before, but they're like very much, all of a sudden, you might not have ever heard of them before. But some of their backgrounds, if you didn't know about it, you realize, okay, there's a reason why they're so popular. And what they've become now, they get Wikipedia pages, and now people know who they are. So Amy Song's one of the names here. She's an LA native, one of the first fashion bloggers of the late aughts to turn their pre-Instagram presence into a full-fledged career. She launched her blog Song of Style in 2008, studying interior architecture at the Academy of Art in San Francisco, and then was being invited to fashion shows front row. Partnerships with the likes of Louis Vuitton, Dior, Gucci, Prada, and others. Has published 2 books, including the New York Times bestseller Capture Your Style, and just launched Amaya, a line of knitwear produced in Italy. And she's reportedly earning as of 2023, she earned $4.7 million. Incredible. Alex Earl, also very popular, 23-year-old and New Jersey native. She was studying at University of Miami when she started going viral with her run-of-the-mill and irresistibly authentic Get Ready With Me videos, bookended by misusing his relationships, makeup, shopping, studying, acne struggles, and wild college nights. Her reach expanded to YouTube, Instagram, and most recently with a popular podcast called Hot Mess on Alex Cooper's The Unwell Network. Of course, some of these influencers will have controversy that follows them along, but if it's not too much, people will go along with it. She is signed with UTA, and she's now pushing products to an audience in a phenomenon dubbed the Alex Earl effect. Charli D'Amelio's on this list, would be the most familiar name on here, by the way. She has more than 155 million followers on TikTok, the most followed woman on TikTok. 20-year-old creates aspirational content for young girls, has turned her and her family's brand into an empire with a Hulu reality series, The D'Amelio Show, and numerous collaborations and business ventures such as D'Amelio Footwear. She's conquered on traditional media as well. She was on season 31 of Dancing with the Stars. And they're all, again, 20s, 30s, and they're just finding themselves. And figure what they're going to do to build themselves as they are. Drew Aflualo, we already talked about before, also has her own areas of things where she was really very much not a fan of men. Let's just say it like that. She is known for skillfully taking down misogynistic TikTok users. She has a social media app. On TikTok, she's launched podcasts, The Comment Section of Two Idiot Girls, wrote a book, New York Times bestselling book, Loud Except Nothing Less Than the Life You Deserve. And she and her sister, the other half of Two Idiot Girls, they've gone on a cross-country tour over the summer to their followers' delight. And again, we can continue going through all these different names of people that he decided to bring along. But again, they have so much they've already done with themselves as influencers. So they already have background. They already have media experience with what some of these people have already done. Whether it's writing books, whether it's doing videos, whether it's doing doing podcasts, which obviously some of these influencers are definitely doing as well. Hannah Berner is also part of this. She broke into comedy writing sketches and tweets for Betches Media. Now she, at 33 years old, has 2 podcasts, more than 100 million combined downloads, a Netflix stand-up special, and her TikTok Woman on the Street video reviews with celebs like Joe Jonas and Charlie XCX going nearly instantly viral. And remember, some of these people are going to be plants, or they're going to find themselves that they have found a way to get themselves out there and be noticed. Kai Cenat, I've mentioned before, many times before, known for his comedic videos and live content. He's 22 years old, one of Twitch's most prominent creators, getting popularity by including such rappers as Lil Baby, 21 Savage, and Nicki Minaj in his programming, named Streamer of the Year at the Streamer Awards in 2022 and 2023. He's credited with popularizing the slang term Riz, a shortening of charisma, selected as the 2023 Oxford Word of the Year. And if you see what he's done right now, there's actually a video that's out there that's got 11 million viewers on X. And I'm sure other places have it. His show resembles what iCarly is. There's a lot of things happening in this one bedroom that he's in that's all lit. And he's sitting there in a gamer chair. And he's had a lot of people on that show. One of the most important ones that he's had on there was Kevin Hart and Tyla, the singer, that, you know, everybody's heard about that story. And I've brought that up, not on this show, but on my Depraved and Debaucherous show. But anyways, Keith Lee is another one. 28 years old, former MMA fighter, took his love for food and has been doing charmingly honest food reviews into a booming brand that tells followers which dining spots they need to check out. So think, Guy Fieri. The Keith Lee effect. And he's helping to do a positive impact with the help of his wife, Ronnie. They launched their first Family Lee food tours, reviewing restaurants in need of an effort to help them gain business. He counts collaborators like Cardi B, Big Sean, and T-Pain for helping him out. But yeah, changing himself to do this. And I followed him going quite a bit. But what happens to me is I don't know how other people feel like that, on how much you follow somebody that you are a fan of. Because then you get fandom of these influencers. And I notice I never really stay on that. It doesn't really become something where I just got to follow along with somebody and I can't go out of my way to just continue to go and learn about people. I don't really think I've gotten myself there either. And as I said, almost all of the people that are brought on here, they are young influencers. They're not old. What you do see in terms of influencers out there are some of the stars out there that have found a way to go ahead and recreate themselves to get noticed. But part of the thing is that people are trying to go and see people much like them. But again, they're all larger than life. They found a way to do themselves that way. And that's okay about that. But it's like, we don't have places where we meet the young stars that all of a sudden become like very popular and noticed. Because we used to have a lot of places for people to go and start off young, get noticed, and then work their way up. And basically live in all of this. But then also what happens is that the agents that are on this part are figuring their way around getting the influencers and getting them signed early and being able to go ahead and build upon who they are. So taking from the folks at UTA, they spoke with several agents, Ali Berman, Damon Lau, Raina Penchansky, and Oren Rosenbaum. And they talk about what they do to bring some of these stars on board. Some of their portfolio of stars that they work with are Emma Chamberlain, Alex Cooper of Call Her Daddy fame, Dave Portnoy of Barstool Sports. They also have Kai Cenat, Mr. Ballin, among others that are also part of this. So what do these people do to find the content where they go ahead and start recruiting talent? Berman says that he looks at a lot of social media with a side of New York Times Games, Spelling Bee to be specific. Lau says he consumes content from a daily variety of weekly and daily newsletters, online news aggregated through web crawlers, social platforms like Instagram, Twitch, TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and WhatsApp, along with streaming services like Spotify, Netflix, and others, plus PC gaming. Penchansky reads Substacks, catching up with the Financial Times, How to Spend It, Business of Fashion, Ad Age Information, also looking at romantasy novels, Apple TV Plus shows, and browsing Class Dojo. Rosenbaum starts at 3 a.m., reads 25 newsletters, followed by 6 to 8 hours of podcasts. In the evening, spends an hour each on YouTube, TikTok, and Twitter. But they all find their ways to get around and learn who's out there. And that's one of the things that Hollywood Reporter makes a point of, and we learn what these influencers are about. So when you look at this and what they're trying to go and do, is it going to work? Because the question you could ask right now, is how many influencers have become? If I ask Google Gemini who those are, if to name me some of those type of stars that have turned into stars from influencer, that's what I want to figure out. So some of the names they bring on here that were able to be found as influencers, which is why people think this might be a good idea. Lily Singh is one. She had comic sketches and vlogs, and she landed her own late night talk show on NBC and has acted in films like Bad Mom and F the Prom. There's Bo Burnham, comedian and musician on YouTube, got a massive following for his witty and satirical songs, and has written and directed acclaimed films like 8th Grade and Inside, and started movies like Promising Young Women. Justin Bieber was another name. Discovered on YouTube, but people found him, and then Usher was the artist that found him to make the record deal and the global pop icon status that he has now. From Vine, they found King Bach, who leveraged his comedic talent into acting roles in movies like 50 Shades of Black and TV shows like The Mindy Project. Shawn Mendes was discovered on Vine, initially finding recognition posting song covers, and led to a record deal and his current status as a popular singer-songwriter. Instagram, you got Cameron Dallas, gained fame through comedic videos and vlogs on Vine and YouTube, but amassed a huge Instagram following, acting in movies like Expelled and Netflix's Chasing Cameron. And that's just the early part. Because we didn't have video as prominent as we do now. Like, of course, YouTube was out there, but how good of quality did you have like you do today? If not for the technology we have on being able to go and do something where we could post on the internet and we could have high quality video on a regular basis, that's what's changing everything. And that's why we're seeing the success that we're finding from influencers on a regular basis. So it works out for them. It's a fascinating story. But is the gamble going to pay off? Because to me, it is very desperate. Because as I said, maybe that Hollywood Reporter is not going to go in and mention all the controversy that some of these stars might have. Alex Earl having a racial slur, Drew Aflualo, reaching out and going after men like she does on social media, and some of the things she says that might not be substantiated. Because one of the things that people can do on TikTok is they can go ahead and stitch, or people can go ahead to the point of that there's obviously a type of people that are more than happy to find ways to bring down and cancel certain stars if they're getting too big. Because we always notice that too. that when somebody gets famous, because social media is what it is, it can make you very viral and very famous, but it can also bring you down. And one of the things with social media that also comes in as well is the kind of mental issues that could come across from some of these stars to bring them into the space. And I guess maybe that's one of the reasons why this might be a good place to go, because how many stars do we already know that already have already have traumatic issues themselves? And the reasons is that some of these influencers got online because they might be very introverted. They might not have found a way to bring themselves out to the light unless they found a way to say, okay, I'm going to do this, but we obviously know that there has been a precedent of certain stars that have made their way across this way. And maybe it's starting to become much easier because influencer and mainstream stars those lines are getting blurred now. And online platforms are starting to become the springboard for diverse and successful careers. Because remember, all these people, they are ambitious, they're motivated, and they'll do just about anything and everything. And they've all learned to become more like Swiss Army knives. They've all learned we're going to find multiple ways, multiple revenue streams to bring ourselves to become rich and successful and famous. Because sometimes it just means to an end. And for some of these people, they are looking for stardom. Because even though Hollywood has a lot of flaws, plenty of them, some people feel like this might still be a way to go. And talent agencies like UTA think it's worth the gamble. But one of the things I also notice as well, when I've talked to various people in the cannabis industry, for example, when I talked to them only a couple of years ago, I want to say like 2020, 2021, when I started seeing where influencers were really becoming much more prominent through TikTok and Instagram. Well, TikTok initially, but then Instagram coming in with Reels also changed the game. What I started seeing more of was the influencers are starting to be brought on as opposed to going after celebrities to promote products or to endorse products. Because one of the things that some of these companies would tell me is that they would say that, you could go for influencers, but they are very difficult to work with. And I think of one of the guys I actually talked about, he definitely told me about the fact that, this is a guy that worked in Hollywood, worked with a lot of people near Hollywood and all. I was able to go and do things where he could work on products he was doing. And one of the things he really did was influencer marketing. And it's amazing where the guy was able to go and do things where he was able to go and get particular influencers to go and help out with certain things that he was trying to do. But it was also very difficult to go and work with those influencers because they were, in some cases, irresponsible. Okay, one of the guys I remember talking to was Luke D'Andrea, the founder of Drip, DRIHP. And he has a clothing line that he did of tanks, tees, undergarments, pretty affordable, made from a blend of hemp and recycled materials. And at that time I talked to him, it was back in June of 2020, as a matter of fact. And the thing that I did with him was he had already started working with Bella Thorne, actress / philanthropist, influencer Rachel Cook, and model and social media personality Jay Alvarez to serve as ambassadors. And he chose to go and do the investment to go ahead and put these products out and get the right kind of people he felt that would go ahead and put something out there. Plus, there are certain causes that some of these influencers will go by. So Bella Thorne had said at the time of coming on to work with Drip, she had said, quote, "It's so important that we take care of Mother Earth and ourselves by using hemp. Drip is using less water than cotton in the process, substantially lowering our use of this precious necessity. The brand is creating well-fitting, eco-friendly clothes that look great and make you feel good." And so that was a number of the things that he did for that product. And that was just an example of influencers that I learned about from him. And it was an interesting conversation. And just like my thing was, I got that takeaway from him that there are advantages and disadvantages for influencers. But as some of them are represented and they have found their way into the space, it's obvious that Hollywood is obviously putting them through an obstacle course, a maze, before they really get to the point of becoming really popular and get to do quite a few things. But we also see that, with some of these influencers, I'm going to segue into another section, is that they can also take their 15 seconds of fame or 15 minutes of fame, and they can find something that will help build themselves to be something bigger. One of those right now is Haley Welch, the Hawk Tuah girl. Again, all she did was do a on the person interview and said that, about you want to take care of your guy, give him a little Hawk Tuah on there, and you do the business. So she was just being cute about it. She's a pretty young girl, blonde, and apparently from all the time she has been out there, one of the things that she's done where she's not, she definitely took advantage of the 15 minutes of fame. She now has a podcast of herself, but what she's done now that's also made her very endearing and very sweet is that she is an animal lover. And now we realize she's really doing a lot for pet adoption and things like that, which is wonderful. Now she has her own charity, and that she's really doing things cross country to really help out in terms of being a pet lover. And that's a wonderful thing. So she took her personality and she took this opportunity to go and be out there. And now, she's going to have a career off of that, and a very smart career at that. So good on her. Good on her for doing that. But then there's also, as we've talked about with some of these influencers, quite a few of them are podcasters. And that's okay. They're the ones that make a lot more money than I do because they got a lot more representation. They got a lot more, financial backing and advertising behind them. Meanwhile, yours truly, King of Podcasts, been doing this for almost 20 years, but nobody's backing me on this. I'm on my own doing it. Slow and slow. If somebody catches on to me and wants to be a part of this, hey, rock on. But I've been doing this for a long time and I enjoy it. And just this program right here is my passion project. I enjoy doing this. I love talking about media. But I also have to go and call out things that are very concerning. For some podcasters, there's a story from Inside Radio, an op-ed piece, and they say that for some podcasters, the time to go political is now. Now, we know that the election for the presidential general election is coming up in less than a month as I'm recording this program. I don't talk about politics. I've said this many times. I'm very apolitical in this program. And so I'm just wondering why this writer here, and, I don't know who tells this story because they don't give a byline. So it's just Inside Radio itself that said this. But we know that podcasting has become very popular. So, for instance, Vice President Kamala Harris and her running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, have been going on different podcasts. So, for instance, Kamala Harris went to Call Her Daddy podcast, and also Tim Walz going to the Smartless podcast, but also just doing a media tour. And for certain radio hosts in the same way, I would put that same thing on. Unless you are talking politics. But if that's not your lane, they're saying that you should. And I don't agree with that. Because one of the things was, I got to talk about Howard Stern this week. He interviewed Kamala Harris. It's not about the interview. Let me make that clear. It's not about the interview. It's just this is like beating a dead horse bloody. Yes, I'm disappointed on what Howard Stern has become. Because the questions he asked, obviously they had to go and be scripted, and, it's not where he's going to get to ask the questions that he wants. He's not going to do the old school show anymore. He is long past that. He's decided to go mea culpa and decide to ask for forgiveness among the betters and elite that know him and whatever, and he wants to go do that. So he basically decided to go ahead and shit on the audience that supported him and lifted him up and give them the $1 billion that he has right now. Decides to go and just throw them away. Because he has. That show is not even a shadow of what the show was. Not anymore. And I would prefer if SiriusXM, which we'll talk about in a moment, there's something to be said about Howard Stern and, where he is on the totem pole right now. Where he is of importance. Because when Kamala Harris was being offered as a guest, so SiriusXM and those programs, the Howard Stern Show and Call Her Daddy, were being looked at for interviews. But the first interview went to Call Her Daddy. So SiriusXM chose to opt to give Alex Cooper the first interview with Kamala Harris. Howard Stern is now secondary. He's second fiddle. Who'd have thought there would be a day when Howard Stern would be irrelevant? But that is a sign right there, folks. Howard Stern will not be renewing his contract next year. I'm going to predict that. Not ready to bet on it, but I think by the end of 2026, we will not see him come back. I forget when the contract actually is done. I got to go look at that again. But if I'm correct, I think his contract is done. I mean, he's out. And he'll probably, I think he'll be doing a goodbye thing or something like that. Yeah, he is done to the end of 2025. And that's where we're at right now with it. If he decides to go another route, at this point, he'll be coming up on 72 years old by the time he decides to renew his contract. Okay? We don't need him to continue. I would prefer that sooner than later, Howard Stern's going to go and hang up the headphones and take listeners out of their misery. Because what he did, the way he acted, the way he responded, it's the disappointment. I mean, who wants to see a radio star that I heralded? And I mean, not because of the fact he's a disruptor, but he also had the rebelliousness, the revolution that radio was. Like, there was a spirit about that. He's nothing like that now. I don't know who this person is. Imagine if Kamala Harris had to go and be subjected to the Howard Stern show 20 years ago, and what questions she would be asked. Would be an entertaining interview, but obviously for the political sense, it would not be good. But we know Howard Stern to be a better interviewer than this. And this is no good. It was just a shame to go and see that. Anyway, back to the story from Inside Radio. When Alex Cooper decided to go and do the show, she wanted to go ahead and preface her interview before she went on, because she decided to go and do something like this and do a political-based interview, because there was a political figure she was going to have on. A very important political figure, nevertheless. She goes on and says, quote, "Every week I talk about topics like mental health, relationships, sex, sexuality, and trauma. Overall, my focus is women and the day-to-day issues we face. So I'll be honest, I have been going back and forth with this decision for a while to get involved or not get involved. But at the end of the day, I couldn't see a world in which one of the major conversations in a selection is women, and I'm not a part of it." Okay. She tried to go and say that, "Please hear me when I say my goal today is not to change your political affiliation. What I'm hoping is that you're able to listen to a conversation that isn't too different than the ones that we're having here every week." Wrong. Because once you bring somebody political into the mix, you are going to go political. You are going to create dissent. And you're isolating possibly half of your audience. For Call Her Daddy, for Alex Cooper, look, she's making $30 million a year right now on a new deal with SiriusXM, and the move just came over here. Was this the right idea for her to do that? I mean, I don't know if she has that decision anymore. She says it's not it's her decision. I don't know if it is. I'm sure she was made that she had to go and do it. And also, it's like, it's a no-brainer. You need to go and do this. Why not? And there were people that did not like that they did this. So her Instagram account had comments that were critical of the decision about the topics that were and were not discussed. One commenter said, quote, "Oh no, why do we have to get this political? Listening to your podcasts was a nice escape from everything we hear about politics daily. But whether any of those came for actual listeners of the podcast is impossible to tell." Right. You might have brought new people to go and listen in just for that one podcast, and that's it. But the thing is that there are shows that are political shows. It is going to be tough to go and do that. Because also the other thing too is that if you're going to have politics on, there's something to be said about, if you're going to have somebody on, they need to fit the tone, the theme of the show. Like, if you are politically slanted and you have a political show that you do, it makes sense. But the thing is that if you're going to bring somebody on the show that's not part of that, like, the thing is, there was a reason why, you say on Johnny Carson, you would see certain people to come on and they would not fit necessarily that part. But like, I mean, how many politicians did you have on that show? Not really that many. It's only in the last couple of years that you really see that real change. Unless you had certain personalities or people that you brought on from politics that, like, usually like after the fact, they might have a personality. They might be good on camera. They might have a good personality. And, you know, you bring them on and like, okay, they're going to be pretty good. And then you might work with them and see what happens after that. But usually it's the other way around, that somebody goes into politics, like a Fred Grandy or an Al Franken. Usually it's like that. But either which way, I mean, I don't think that you necessarily going to need to do this right here where you are doing political podcasts if it's not your bag. And so for me, I don't want to do those kind of shows. I would highly recommend not doing that. Political content is going to be difficult. And I understand there's an audience you can get from that and all that. But you know what? I would never take one of those interviews. But I'm not everybody out there. I'm sure there are plenty of people that would be willing to go ahead and take the chance to go and have her on. Listen, on Cannabis Radio that I produce, one of the conversations we were having was, could we get Kamala Harris to be on one of our shows? You know what? In my own internal discussions, I'm like, well, number one, I mean, it doesn't matter about her. What matters is we're not going to be able to get anything new out of the interview. Let's make that also a point. Like, unless you can get something new and you can also humanize and talk about things where where you actually have somebody that fits the role, might be a different story. It's all about in the guests that you have, if they fit a role. I always have to do that because some of the people that I bring on Cannabis Radio, you got to find out what role works for them and what program they work best in to give them the best possible chance. But the other thing too is that I don't like to script my shows. I'm not going to overly script my shows. I'll have 5 or 6 talking points for a half-hour interview, and I'll go through that. But I'll plan it because I want to have time to go and talk about my own things when I'm on there, because I'm also going to have my voice heard and get the voice of the guest on there and make it all work. But, I mean, for politics, if I decided to bring it up with a guest, something that might be political, because we do talk about on Cannabis Radio about certain things we're waiting for cannabis to be legalized. But other than that, I don't prefer to have a show that's political. I wouldn't want to be in that anyway. Listen, talk radio right now is dying on the vine. You've had all these different hosts that have left talk radio. Okay, we had Air America that went away. And all the people that you could have on talk radio, they're not over here. Not Positive America, not, nothing with the New York Times, nothing with NPR. NPR has those shows, but like really, politics is on podcasting, but there's a lot of political podcasts out there. And if it's not your area and you're not very well read or informed, which obviously it looks like Alex Cooper was not prepared for that interview in terms of understanding what might have been going on, because you want to have somebody over there that probably has if you're going to have to talk politics with that guest, you got to understand what the politics are. If you're not well read and well informed, to be following that stuff, it's like a damn soap opera. You got to follow that almost every day. It's like a spectator sport, and a year-long spectator sport at that. You got to understand the whole way it works. Have your civics classes and kind of have an idea of how government works. Do you really want to do that? I mean, for some people, they might feel like it's a cool, fun thing to do, but I never did. So for those of you out there, if you decide to go and do it, there are consequences and there are repercussions for doing that. Alex Cooper will find that out soon enough, because you got to ask yourself, once she has that interview on, now that it happens, does she get an increase in listeners? Could be. She could also risk taking a drop in listeners. But then what happens too is that because she made precedent of having a guest like Kamala Harris on, the vice president, then maybe she's going to be made or encouraged, because the interview does well, she's not going to have to go and do more political content. And her show might ultimately be political after all said and done. And is that going to be what she wants to do as well? You take a risk doing that. It's like politics, religion. No, I'm not going to touch those areas. Not my expertise. And I would prefer that other people don't do the same thing too. You think about the fact that SiriusXM, they're going to put Alex Cooper's podcast and all of her Unwell Network behind a paywall. Remember? Their own individual paywall. All through like Apple subscriptions, right? Apple podcast subscriptions. And what's happening is they're having issues right now with their stock. So SiriusXM, following their spinoff from Liberty Media, according to Motley Fool, that S&P Global Market Intelligence data says the stock is finished down 28%, with shares plunging in the first half of the month. So after the market closed, Liberty SiriusXM Holdings on September 9th spun off and merged with SiriusXM Holdings, becoming an independent company from Liberty Media. And they went through a 1-for-10 reverse stock split. So they got the stock price out of penny stock range, and reduced outstanding shares by 12%, providing a short-term boost following the transaction. But now the stock needs to prove itself before it can be considered a buy. And some of the factors working against the new shares, the satellite radio provider has underperformed the market for years. It is profitable. Investors won't find its growth rating terribly inspiring. Second quarter, revenue was down 3%. SiriusXM self-pay subscribers falling by 100,000 listeners. And they're talking about that with Howard Stern. Many believe will retire or substantially cut back production next year, could also limit the stock's returns. I don't think so. I mean, what's happened right now, it's obvious. We talked about about a month ago, or maybe about 2 months ago. SiriusXM has made their bed with putting in new content with the Unwell Network with Alex Cooper, with Smartless, and the Megyn Kelly Show, among others. They have other shows they've brought on board, and they're going to try to go ahead and offset the erosion of subscribers to their regular satellite content and try to get them on the podcast content. Premium podcast content, as a matter of fact. That's what they're going to try to do. It might work out for them, but like I said, it's things like when Alex Cooper makes the risk and takes the idea of, let's try to go and do something political. I'm not going to discourage anybody from doing it. Listen, you want to go and do that, you do what you want. You're more than welcome to. I just wouldn't take the risk of that. And this is going almost 20 years on this. I just don't want to. I mean, there's even celebrities and all. There's just certain people I just don't want to talk to because it would take away from the content I'm trying to do. So I don't do that many interviews anyway for this program. When I have, it's like, it's important, it works. Anyway, come back for another show. Remember, content is king. And the control of your content, as long as you want it, is still in your hands.